welcome. It's another late night, and I thought, man, a perfect time to put this video together. I'm going to show you how to compile your own OpenWRT image for the Raspberry Pi 4B, get it installed, and then walk you through a basic configuration. There are some prerequisites you're going to need. So from a software perspective, you're going to need either a Mac running OS X or Linux Debian-based distro. I'm going to be using LinuxMint. Now, you might think, oh wait, I've only got a Windows machine. Don't worry. I'm actually running this on Windows as well, so I'll show you how to install a hypervisor, how to create a virtual machine, install LinuxMint, so you can get an environment up and running on your Windows machine to get this job done. Now, obviously, you're going to need some hardware. You will need a Raspberry Pi 4B, a USB keyboard. You'll need a USB 3 to gigabit Ethernet adapter. I'm using this one here by TrendNet. The model is TU3-ETG. And I'm using this particular one here because the drivers that we need for this chipset are built into OpenWRT. So we'll be able to get it compiled and actually get that working. You will need a micro SD card slot on your computer. If you don't have one, like myself, I don't have one, you can grab one of these adapters. This is a USB adapter by SanDisk, and to micro SD. I've chosen this one because it's supported by Linux. So we'll need that as well. Now this is my Raspberry Pi 4B. I have a 4 gig model. As you can see, it's installed in a rather pretty case. I actually 3D printed this case out of PETG or PETG filament. I really like it because the ports just line up perfectly. As you can see, it's got a lot of great airflow here designed into the case. It gives you the option to install a fan. So I have a 40 millimeter Noctua fan installed here. And beneath that, you can kind of see the silver glint of the heat sinks, which we're probably all accustomed to for the Raspberry Pi. I'm using this setup because I'm going to overclock this Raspberry Pi 4B, and I'll show you how to do that as well. This does have a lid, in case you're wondering. All right, I think that's it. So why don't we go ahead and let's get started. Okay, so to grab the VirtualBox hypervisor software, we'll just do a quick search for it here. VirtualBox. Boom, there we go. So you just download the latest version. You'll see here they give you the binaries. So there is the host. So I'm a Windows host, so I would download that. And then you're going to want the extension pack, all supported platforms. Okay, so to get VirtualBox installed, all you're going to do is go to your downloads folder, double-click the VirtualBox file you downloaded, and that will walk you through the setup wizard, and you can just accept all the defaults, and it will get it installed for you. I think it may ask for a reboot. Once you're done, you'll have an icon here for your Oracle VM VirtualBox. Just double-click that. The next thing you're going to want to do is add the extension pack. So I clicked File Preferences. You'll go to Extensions. You'll click on this little Add icon, and you'll choose the VirtualBox extension pack that we downloaded. Click Open, accept the prompts, and boom, you'll install that. And what that does is it basically just lets you use more of your peripherals, like USB 3, for example. So that's nice and seamless. Okay, you can see I have some VMs created, which I've already used these for creating this video. So I'm going to create a new one here and just walk you through a clean install on LinuxMint. Okay, so to grab LinuxMint, let's launch Chrome here. And we're going to navigate, just do a quick search, LinuxMint, linuxmint.com. And then you'll click on download. And it really doesn't matter which one of these you use. I used Cinnamon 64-bit. So you'll just click on that. You'll click a mirror that's closest to you, depending on where you are in the world. And you will download the ISO. So this is basically the install disk, if you can think of it, back in the old DVD days, that we are downloading. And we're going to use that to get our install done. All right, so once that completes, essentially what we're going to do now is we're going to go to our VirtualBox, click on New, and then you're going to give your VM a name. So I'll just call this one LinuxMint Demo. You can accept this default directory. I have another disk that I like to install my virtual machines on. And the reason I do that is because it allows me to have a virtual machine running on its own disk, own I/O, not really interfering with my core desktop. All right, so now our type is Linux, the version Ubuntu 64-bit, or if you choose 32-bit, it should already know that basically. If not, just pull your drop down and select it. Click next. Okay, here we're going to give it some RAM. So this is the amount of memory. And this really kind of depends on how much memory you have installed on your system. A good rule of thumb, though, I would say is at least 4 gigs. So that would be 4096. Click next. Now we are going to create a virtual hard disk. I like to choose the VDI, VirtualBox disk image. Dynamically allocated is the type. And basically what this does here, it says a hard disk file will only use space on your physical disk as it fills up to the maximum fixed size. So basically our hard disk for this virtual machine is just going to be a file. Right? It's not an actual hard disk in my computer. It's just a file. And I'm telling it here that I only want that file to be as large as the amount of data I'm storing in this virtual machine. If I chose a fixed size, right, then on this next screen here, it's going to ask me how big I want my virtual hard disk to be. Well, if I chose 100 gigabytes and I had chosen a fixed disk size, then it would actually create a file that was 100 gigabytes in size. It's like it would pre-allocate that space. Dynamic, however, does it on the fly. So I could select 150 gigs, and after I get done with the install of my operating system, that file is only going to be maybe 3 gigs in size, if that. It'd be really, really small. Okay, so I'm going to hit create, and really, bam, there you go. We've given it the default settings for our virtual machine. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on the settings wheel here, little gear, and I'm going to go through and make a few changes. So I'm going to click on System. I am going to deselect the floppy disk. I'm going to click on Processor. Now I'm going to give mine 4 CPUs. And I can do that because I have a 12-core processor in my computer, my host computer. So I have lots of computing power. The typical average machine, like a consumer machine, you're probably going to have a Core i3, Core i5 for a low mid-tier type of machine. So you may just only want to do a 2 CPU. That's what I would recommend if you're unsure. But if hey man, I've got a Core i9, I can throw some CPUs at this thing, go for it. As you can see here, it's going to tell you what the max is. So on my computer, I could give it 24 CPUs. Really, I could have given it 12, and according to my computer, that would still leave me in a green zone, meaning, I have all of my cores basically available on my processor, hyper-threaded cores. But if you plan on running lots of VMs alongside one another, I typically, for me, 4 is overkill, and usually just fine for what I'm doing. Okay, display. I go ahead and crank out the video memory, and then you can enable 3D acceleration if you have, a 3D graphics card. It will just make use of that and will allow you to just have, better visual experience in the operating system. Okay, so now we have our virtual disks. You can see we have our hard drive we created, and we also have a virtual CD-ROM or DVD. So I'm going to click on this little disk right here, and I'm going to say choose a disk file. And here is the LinuxMint disk that I just downloaded. So I'm going to click open. Audio, I'm going to leave enabled. Network, you can run NAT or you can run bridged adapter. And this really kind of depends on how your physical machine is connected to your network. If you are connected on a hard wire, like an Ethernet wire, then you can do bridged. And basically what it's going to do is share that physical adapter directly with this machine. Your machine will present another physical adapter and your network will think there's 2 physical machines there. NAT is just going to basically kind of run behind a NATed network that's hosted on the machine. It's almost like there's a virtual switch on your physical computer that's plugged into your physical network. And if you're not plugged in and you're using Wi-Fi, this is probably the way to go because it's going to allow you to leverage that Wi-Fi connection essentially on your network. This can be changed later too, by the way. So if you're unsure, just accept the default and kind of move on. USB now, since I have the extension pack installed, I can choose USB 3.0 and use my USB 3.0. And that's really it for me. So, okay, we're good to go. Now we can hit the start button. It's going to ask us to verify our startup disk. I'm going to hit start here. Drag this over. And now you can just hit enter for start LinuxMint. I'm going to try to right click and see if I can adjust. I can't, so maybe I'll scale this up a little bit to make it easier to see. Okay. And I'm going to double click install LinuxMint. And now I speak English, so I'm going to select that as my language. Again, it's asking me for keyboard layout. Yep, standard English keyboard. I'm going to choose to install third-party software for graphics, Wi-Fi hardware, etc. Okay, I'm going to erase disk and install LinuxMint. Now remember, this is just our virtual hard drive, so it's not my actual hard drive in my computer. It's that virtual file that we created. Just hit continue. Okay, you want to choose a time zone. And now you will give, provide some information. So your name can be anything you want here. I'm just going to say lab coat, kind of my generic user I like to use. My computer name. So I usually name this the same as my VM. Username is lab. Choose a password. And then you can select whether you want to require your password to log in, which I recommend, or log in automatically if you want to. Okay, so you see we have a little progress bar here. If you click this little drop down, it will actually give you a little verbose window of what it's actually doing, right? So it's kind of giving you step by step what it's grabbing, what it's copying, et cetera, et cetera. Don't really need to see that. For me, the progress bar is just fine. Okay, so we are done. We can click restart now. It's asking me to remove the installation medium, which I'm not really doing. I'm just pressing the enter key. Okay, we are almost done here. So as you can see, it's bringing us in, giving us a little startup dialog, which you can walk through, kind of gives you some basics. Now, this is our virtual machine and our Linux OS running here. We do need to install something, though, before we kind of get going, and that is our guest additions. And this just really kind of installs video drivers, and a few other things to kind of help the keyboard and video integration work better with your virtual machine. And every time they update VirtualBox to a new version, you will have this CD kind of built into the VirtualBox manager, and you can go into your VMs and install the latest drivers, basically. So it's wanting my user password here. It's telling me it needs to run as a super user. So this is basically elevated privileges, and it just wants my password to ensure that I want to do this, basically. And it's going to auto run and get this installed. Okay, press return to close this window. Then you can right click on the DVD and eject it. Left click that. So now we're going to restart. And at this point, we are ready to go. And I don't know if you can see here, but basically how this works is my mouse now is just very seamless. I can just move it in and out of the virtual machine. I also have the ability to resize. So I can right click on this little window, go to virtual screen, and I can tell it, oh, I want, HD. And so it'll resize my screen to be HD. Let me scale this to 100%. There you go. There you have it. This is LinuxMint up and running and ready for us to go. Now you're just going to click the little terminal window, and this is going to bring up our terminal. We'll be working out of here primarily. I'm just going to zoom in to make it easier for you to see what I'm typing here. So the first thing we need to do is just really make sure we are up to date on all the latest patches, etc. So I'm going to type in this command. Type in my user password. And this is just going out there to see, get an update of all of our repositories. And then I'm going to change this. I just basically clicked there, the up arrow key, or press the up arrow key. And now I'm going to which gives you kind of a list of the previous commands that you've typed in. And I'm going to change this to upgrade. It says there's stuff available. So I'm going to click Y for yes, or type Y for yes. And away we go. So it just depends on how fast your internet speed is here, your hard drive, etc., as to how quickly you can get this accomplished. Okay, so it looks like we have an update for Grub. This is basically a bootloader, if you will. So I'm just going to hit enter. I'm going to press the space bar to select our virtual disk, hit the tab key, and then enter again. All right, so we're done with that. I think at this point, what I like to do is normally a reboot, just to make sure that if we have any services that are hung or whatever, they have an opportunity to restart. So we'll just restart real quick. We'll log back in. We will launch another terminal window. Let me zoom back in again. Bada boom, bada bing. All right, now we need to install some prereq software we will need in order to get this compile completed. So apt is our package manager, by the way, in LinuxMint here. Okay, I'm going to do git. And most of this I've pulled off of the OpenWRT website. Maybe digging through the forums. Press enter. Password. Y for yes. I have 128 megabytes worth of software to grab. And while this is crunching away, let's go ahead and grab Etcher. So if you have done any work with the Raspberry Pi, it's very possible that you have come across Etcher. Etcher is a cool little utility. I think it supports practically every operating system out there. Here's our download for Linux, save file. That lets us write image files to flash media, like a USB key, right? In our case here, it's going to be the micro SD. So that is done downloading. Let's go ahead and grab this. So we'll need this in order to write our OpenWRT image file that we have compiled. I'm going to right-click this, drag it to the desktop, close this, double-click it, boom, works. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to go ahead and navigate to here, the Sublime text editor. I'm going to use this to modify, there's install for Linux, the config files to overclock the Raspberry Pi. And I like this editor. I use it a lot in Windows because it doesn't modify formats for text files by default. Unlike WordPad, Notepad, it actually will change the formats of the text files and make them unusable for a lot of Linux stuff that you're doing. So I use Sublime pretty much universally. There are others out there, but this is just the one I've gotten accustomed to here. So this is the instructions for installing. So we will copy and paste into our terminal window, giving us the commands. Very, very nice of them. We want the stable version. And then we have good old sudo apt-get update. And then the install. Beautiful. So if I just search for it, there it is. And I think I can right-click on this and do add to desktop. Beautiful. Okay. So now let's go ahead and set up our environment variables. So this just basically, we have some scripts we have to run, and it's going to help them find the files they need. Beautiful. All right. So at this point, we now are ready to go and clone our GitHub source. This is documented on the OpenWRT site as well. Now, I am in my home directory, and this is where I want to install OpenWRT, or at least that's going to create the folder for it. So I'm just going to run it from here. So git clone. Awesome. We're almost there. We just have 2 more scripts to run, and then we can actually run the menu generator to run through and select our options for our OpenWRT image. Okay, looks good. So I'm just going to pop into the directory. There it is, OpenWRT. And we're going to run some scripts in the script directory here. I'm going and grabbing some more stuff from GitHub, I believe, just making sure we have everything that we need. Brilliant. Now we're going to run the install script. Beautiful. On up arrow, I'm going to run this again. And the reason I do this, I just found this the quickest, easiest way for me to ensure that I don't have any errors. So normally if you're missing a dependency or something like that, at this point you would have a warning and it would give you, an error message around the dependency you're missing. So you could go and Google that and try to figure out how to install it. But here, no errors, so we're good to go. All right, now I've cleared the terminal window. We are ready to compile, but I do want to show you one way to customize your OpenWRT router. So if we navigate here to, let me find this folder, go to Home, OpenWRT, then it's going to be under Package, Base Files, files, etc. Here we go, our banner. So we have the option here, if we drag this over to Sublime and open this, you can see this is going to be the SSH banner that is displayed when you SSH into your router. You can customize this. You can change this text here and customize it to your liking. I also find this is really handy if you are planning on using the Raspberry Pi for like a branch router, and you're supporting multiple locations and you want to be able to uniquely identify them so that when you SSH in, oh, I'm exactly at this location. So what we can do here is you can change this to whatever you want. I'm just gonna go and do a quick search for an ASCII text converter. A good one here. Okay, so as you see, we can type in some text and it's going to change create some ASCII art for us. Now, they've got lots of different templates here that you can choose from. I'm going to go choose, let's see, there was one in here. Yeah, speed. So for example, I could say this is, something like OpenWRT. And I can just copy this. I'm going to come in here and paste this. Awesome. And then I'm going to change this to, okay. So I can just file save and close this. So now when you compile, it's going to compile that banner into your image file. Okay, so at this point, we are ready to run our make menu config. And I'm going to go ahead and, this is a good habit here. You want to make this terminal window large, and you'll see why in a second. Boom, because we now have a good old-fashioned text-based menu system. So this is where we get to select the components that we want for our OpenWRT firmware. This is basically going to be our operating system we are going to install on our Raspberry Pi 4B. So the first thing we're going to do is press enter here on our target system. We're going to scroll down, hit the space bar to select Broadcom BCM27XX. Now you can see here this target profile, it already knows this is a Raspberry Pi chipset, but it's not the board that we need. So we're going to go to sub-target, press enter. I'm going to do the 64-bit. If you want to compile 32-bit, you would select this second one here. I'm going to go down and do the fourth one. And it knows I have a Raspberry Pi 4B. Boom, there we go. Go down to target images, and I'm going to deselect the external or ext4 and keep the squash file system. I'm going to right arrow over and hit exit, enter for exit. Okay, now we are going to arrow down to kernel modules. I'm going to arrow down to USB support. Press enter. Okay, so you want to make sure that the Kmod USB HID is selected. That's going to let us plug in our USB keyboard. So that by default is there. The next one is this USB-net. So hit the space bar, hit it again for the star. Select the first two as stars. So the chipset here, this 88179, I believe is what is actually used, but I'm grabbing both of these for the ASICs USB to Ethernet converter or adapter that we're using. All right. So now let's go down. We do need a couple of other things here. We need the Kmod USB-2 and USB-3. And that's it. We can right arrow and do exit. Okay, now we're going to run down to, we can right over an right arrow over and select exit. Then we can go down to libraries, enter. We're going to go in here. I'm going to grab two libraries here, and the reason I'm grabbing these is in case you ever want to rotate your SSH keys. Not something you necessarily need to do if you are going to only be using this SSH into your OpenWRT on your LAN. If you're wanting to do this from the WAN, then from the web, I would highly recommend rotating the SSH keys. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab these for you so they are there. All right, libssh. I'm just grabbing 2 for the fun of it. All right. Then right arrow and exit. Scroll down to Lucy. Go into collections and double space for star on the Lucy SSL open SSL. Exit. If you want to here, let's see, you can grab the themes. All right. So now you're going to right arrow over to save. Hit OK. Hit OK again. Right arrow over to exit, and we're done. So now we've written our config file. We're ready to compile this guy. Okay, so to compile our OpenWRT config into our firmware file that we need, we're going to run the command make. Now, if you are using more than one CPU on your VM, you can use this -J switch, and you will use the number of CPUs plus 1. So I have 4 on this VM, so mine would be 5. If you did 2, it would be 3, right? Can you get the example there? And this is in the documentation for make. And here we go. Now, look, this can take a while. I've seen this take up to an hour to get a compile done. It depends on how many modules we've selected, how fast our CPU is, how much memory, how fast the disk is, etc. So this can take a while, folks. So take a break. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to come back when this is complete, and we will pick it up from there. Okay, it's done, which means we are back to our prompt here. And more importantly, it's done without any error messages. So we should be good to go at this point. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to navigate, show you what files are important to us. We're going to go to our bin directory in OpenWRT, targets. There's our chipset here. And bam, we have a factory.image file. So this is our compiled image that we need to be able to burn to our micro SD card. Now, if you notice, you also get a sys upgrade file. So if you've already installed OpenWRT and you just want to upgrade to the latest version, you would compile it, create your sys upgrade image file, and you would upload this via your web browser, right, via the GUI on the OpenWRT router. So what we need to do now is insert our micro SD. I'm just going to plug mine in. I'm going to go to devices, USB, and connect it. There it is, the SanDisk. Now mine is auto mounting the drive because I already had a previous image burned here, so no big deal. I'm going to run Etcher. I can close my terminal window. I'm going to select my image. Home, OpenWRT, bin, targets, my factory.image file, open. It already knows I've inserted the disk. There it is, 8 gigs, and flash. Once my user password, we're done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to eject it and then reinsert it to have it auto mount for me again. As promised, I am going to be overclocking. So I'm going to find my config file. There it is. I'm going to drag this over to sublime.txt, or Sublime text there. And I'm going to create the following lines. So Pi4 in brackets. All right, I'm going for the gusto here. This 2147. That's what, 2.1 gigahertz, I believe. If you try to run your Pi and it's unstable, locks up, freezes, whatever, you would come in and choose a lower number. So 2000, 1700, something like that. You keep lowering it until you get stable. But I'm going to go here, since I've got heat sinks and the fan, I'm going to go for the most I think I can squeeze out. We're going to click save here, close this, and we are done here. So I'm going to go ahead and eject. All right. So at this point, what you're going to do is you're going to take that micro SD card, plug it into your Raspberry Pi, plug in your power, plug in your USB keyboard. You're going to plug your broadband router into the USB 3 gigabit Ethernet adapter, which you have also plugged into a USB 3 port. And you are going to plug in your local area network into the onboard Ethernet network. So you could plug that straight into your PC if you didn't have a switch or anything like that. Or if you did have a network, you would plug that, local area network onboard network cable from the Raspberry Pi, that jack into your switch. Okay, so I'm going to type in this ifconfig command here, and you will see that I have now a IP address of 192.168.1.206. This is random. You may have a .50 or .40, who knows? But this is the network of the local area network on our Raspberry Pi now. So what we're going to do is, and you'll have to make sure your keyboard, that USB keyboard, is plugged in on the first boot. Okay, you only need it for the first time you boot up your Raspberry Pi on OpenWRT, but after that it won't be needed. You can unplug it and just power on your Raspberry Pi and it's going to completely boot. But the first time it waits for a keyboard for some reason. So just kind of keep that in mind. But we're not going to really need it here. What we're going to do is we're going to open up our browser. And we are going to go to the address of our OpenWRT router now. Click Advanced, click Accept the Risk, and here we go. Now there is no password, so we're going to click Login, and then we're going to go to Password Configuration, and you're going to set a password here. You want it to be strong, so it should be complex, not something easily guessed. Oh, I can't type. Okay, great. Dismiss doesn't seem to want to work. No big deal. Let's just close this and go back in. I'm going to log in with my new password. Perfect. Okay. So as we stand right now, we cannot actually browse the web. There are a few things we need to change. So the first thing that we're going to want to change here, we're going to go to System. And we're going to want to set a host name. I mean, personally, I don't want anyone knowing just by the host name on my device here that it's OpenWRT. So you can, create whatever you want here. Any kind of name that you want for the World Wide Web to see. Okay. So I might just call this Gateway Router. Nice. You can select a time zone. I'm in Central Time Zone right now here in America, so I'm just going to put that on here. And really that's just going to make sure that my local timestamps are like the logs are hopefully going to be generated in that time zone. Make it easier on myself later. Okay, let's see here. Anything else that I want to change? I don't think so. Let's go to network interfaces. All right, so right now you see we just have the local area network interface. We have to set up our WAN. So wide area network, I'm going to tell it to bridge it, and I'm going to choose my Ethernet 1. There's the wireless, just so you can see there is a wireless adapter there. Create the interface. Advanced settings, okay. Yes, I want to use as my default gateway. You can choose to use the DNS servers advertised by the peer, or you can specify your own. Totally up to you here. Okay, firewall. We want to tell it this is our WAN. Click save. Now click apply. Okay, so that looks right. LAN will go out through WAN, and WAN will reject. So that's what we want here for just default stuff. So now, essentially, I should be able to browse the web. So let's just check it out. And there we go. So it is set up and ready to go. Now there's a lot more we could go into here with, how to configure the firewall and different things that you might be interested in, other topics. So let me know if there is anything you're interested in or struggling with. Can definitely help with that. I'm going to go through here and tweak this myself just to kind of harden the device a little bit. Let me show you one other thing here. Okay, so software. You remember I told you you could, add packages later. So to do that, you'll go to software. You'll click this update list. And it's going to go out there, use its package manager, and it's going to update what's available. Okay, click dismiss. And here are all the packages that are available. So as you can see, there's quite a bit out here, and you can, search by keyword, and it'll filter the list for you. You can also, go find a package and upload it manually. And then from there, you can install it. So this is just a really great way to be able to maintain the device and, augment the functionality as you get more familiar with it and want to do more with it. Awesome. Well, I hope this has helped. Feel free to like and subscribe, hit the alarm bell for notifications on future videos, and comments for topics you'd like me to cover. Thanks again.